Pokemon Next Generation, Fanfiction, Season 1, Episode 21, created by Marcus J. Anthony, narrated by Roach. Marc walked through the mountains of Cinnabar Island, Charlie and Ray sitting on his shoulders. He smiled at them. "You girls were incredible yesterday," he said, referring to the battle against Nestina and the poachers. "I know we'll win our 4th badge together." Up ahead, Marc spotted Blaine standing on a high rock, looking out over the island. Poliwag was by his side. Marc smirked. "I knew I'd find you here."
I come here to think a lot.
"Are you okay with what I did? Putting your dream on the line. It's just, my brothers always tried to control me. Maven always said I needed to be tougher, and Malcolm said I needed to be smarter. The way Skorcha was treating you, it felt personal to me. Like I was that weak kid again. The weak triplet."
I'm grateful, Marc. If my grandpa Blaine was still alive, he'd have done the same thing for me.
He looked down at Poliwag.
But I'm not worried. I saw your Pokemon's strength against Nestina and those poachers.
Marc grinned, but Blaine's expression turned serious.
Skorcha's no joke. She's strong, and she's making it a 4-on-4 battle.
He warned. Marc nodded. "I need to figure out my other 2 Pokemon." Blaine smirked.
Just don't go catching Poliwag.
The two laughed as they both turned to the beautiful view of Cinnabar Island.
Who's that Pokemon?
Hey Elite Trainers, if you love building the perfect Pokemon team, you'll definitely want to try Raid Shadow Legends, a free-to-play game with over 700 champions to collect, upgrade, and battle with. Each champion has unique abilities, kind of like building your dream Pokemon squad, but with epic fantasy warriors instead of Pikachu. Download Raid using the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen, and you'll get a free bonus pack, Champion Rector Draft, an energy refill, a 1-day XP booster, and a skill tome epic to boost your progress. And once you hit level 15, you'll unlock Ugo, who's also in the Champions Index. Oh, and they just added a new Alice in Wonderland themed champion, so it's the perfect time to jump in. And by downloading through that link, you're not only getting a great game, you're also helping support the creator of this video and future content. Check it out and start your adventure today.
It's
At the beach, Rachel and Anthony trained their newly hatched Pokemon with Skorcha and Flareon. Anthony's Growlithe wanted to play instead of training, and Anthony didn't push it. Rachel had a tougher time. Her Vulpix ignored every command. The tension between them only worsened when it got into another brawl with Eevee. Skorcha chuckled.
You two have your hands full.
She glanced at her Rotom phone.
I gotta get the gym ready for Marc's challenge. Good luck.
After she left, Rachel approached Anthony, who was now staring at the ocean.
I know you hate Darius.
Anthony tensed. Rachel continued.
Is it because you were attacked by a Persian when you were a kid?
Anthony didn't respond. Rachel pressed.
That's part of it, isn't it?
Anthony exhaled. "Yeah, but it's more than that." His voice was strained, like he was dragging up memories he didn't want to revisit. "I hate Persian and Meowth because of Team Rocket. And because..." He hesitated, his throat tightening. "A Persian was one of the Pokemon that killed your father, Stephen Stone." Rachel's expression darkened. Anthony continued. "I guess part of me doesn't get why you don't hate them too." Rachel's eyes flashed with irritation.
So you're saying I should hate all Meowth and Persian?
Anthony opened his mouth to speak, but hesitated.
Not all Pokemon of the same species are the same, Anthony. They don't all have the same heart and mind. Most Pokemon do what their trainers tell them. That Persian wasn't evil. Giovanni was. And if we're going by your logic, then Giovanni's Nidoking and Nidoqueen were also among the Pokemon who killed my dad. But guess what? We both have their pre-evolved forms.
Anthony's breath hitched. Rachel pressed on.
You treat your Nidorino with love. You even caught him so he could stay with Nidorina. So why do you hate Darius? What makes him so different?
Anthony's mouth opened, but no words came out. Rachel stared at him, her voice quieter but still firm.
You can't even explain it, can you?
Anthony looked away. He wanted to argue back, to push away the uncomfortable truth, but Rachel's words had hit too deep. Rachel took a deep breath and softened her tone.
I overcame my fear of poison types, Anthony. I caught 2, and one of them is Nidorina, the pre-evolved form of a Pokémon that was used to kill my dad.
Her voice lowered, but it carried a heavy weight.
If I can overcome that, then you can overcome this. Because if you don't, you're going to lose Marc.
Anthony flinched.
Marc loves his Pokémon more than anything. If he ever realizes how much you resent Darius, it's only going to hurt him.
Anthony remained silent. The truth of Rachel's words pressed down on him like a weight he wasn't ready to carry. But deep down, he knew she was right. Marc walked onto the beach, his sudden arrival startling Anthony and Rachel. Another fight broke out between Vulpix and Eevee. Before any trainer could react, Charlie and Ray jumped in. Charlie pushed Vulpix back with a firm stance, while Ray zapped a tiny shock between the two to separate them. The Pokemon growled, but reluctantly backed away. Rachel groaned. She didn't know what to do with Vulpix, stating that she had always wanted to catch one, but now the one she has doesn't respect her, which is causing Eevee to be upset. Anthony then turned to Marc. You ready for your gym battle? Marc hesitated. His expression was tense. He took a deep breath. There's something on my mind, and I need you to both keep it a secret. Before the SS Anne sank, I saw it. Anthony frowned. Saw what? The armored Pokemon the news is talking about. Anthony's eyes widened. The one they think is Mewtwo? Marc shook his head. It wasn't Mewtwo. He looked up, eyes dark with memories. I saw it battle Tapu Koko in the sky, and it killed it. Rachel gasped, and Anthony stiffened. Tapu Koko is gone? Marc nodded grimly, and after it won, it retreated to a spaceship.
Alola needs to know.
There's more, Marc said. I was approached by Looker from the International Police. He told me what that thing actually is. Anthony and Rachel leaned in. It's called Mew-Z, Marc said. It was created from the DNA of Mew, Mewtwo, and Zygarde. Anthony's eyes widened in horror. Zygarde too? Marc nodded. The blueprints were designed by Giovanni, but they were stolen. Looker thinks Giovanni's allies used them to create this thing. Then those are the guys who kidnapped Ash. Marc met his gaze. I think so. Anthony's face twisted with anger. This is all Giovanni's fault. Maybe, but Looker also told me something else. He paused. Giovanni is in a coma. Anthony frowned. A coma? He had no health issues, no warning, he just collapsed while he was about to tell Looker something important. Marc's eyes darkened. I think Mew-Z is behind it. Mew-Z is the real leader of this new group. Anthony swallowed hard. And what does it want? Marc's gaze hardened. To take over the world. He turned to see Charlie and Ray, their eager expressions snapping him out of his thoughts. Their excitement was contagious, and Marc smiled. You girls are right, he said. It's time to focus. We've got a gym battle to win. Rachel and Anthony nodded, and together, the trio set off towards Cinnabar's Volcano Mountain, where the Cinnabar gym awaited. After a long and exhausting hike, they finally reached a massive cave entrance carved into a rocky mountainside. Standing at the entrance, Blaine laughed.
You guys hiked all the way here? Why didn't you just get a Pidgeot taxi?
Marc, Rachel, and Anthony groaned in unison as the realization hit them. Blaine smirked as he stepped towards Marc.
I'm honored you're doing this. Fighting for my dream.
Marc nodded. I won't let you down. A voice interrupted them.
Are you ready?
Skorcha approached, her expression sharp. Marc took a breath. I'm ready. Without another word, the group entered the volcanic cavern, stepping into the Cinnabar Gem. Inside, the rocky interior of the volcano glowed from molten lava that bubbled beneath the battlefield. A large statue, carved from volcanic stone, stood at the entrance. Blaine Sr., the former gym leader and Skorcha's and Blaine's grandfather. Marc paused, admiring the craftsmanship, but his focus was yanked away when his eyes fell on the battlefield. Lava churned beneath it. The battle platform hovered above the boiling abyss, supported by heavy steel beams embedded into the cavern walls. Marc's chest tightened. What if his Pokemon fell? He'd heard the stories. Only a few Pokemon could survive the heat of lava, and Magmar was one of them. Marc snapped out of it. He wouldn't let that happen. He took a deep breath and steadied himself. He came here to win. Anthony, Rachel, and Blaine stood nearby, watching intently. Vulpix and Eevee continued to bite at one another. Rachel considered returning them to their Pokeballs.
If you two don't behave, it's straight into the Pokeball for the both of you.
A referee stepped forward.
This will be a 4-on-4 battle. Only Marc Masters can make substitutions.
Marc stepped forward, his eyes locked on his opponent. Marc and Skorcha both threw their Pokeballs at the same time. From Marc's side, Rocco the Graveler landed on the battlefield with a heavy thud, flexing his rocky arms. Opposite him, Flareon emerged in a flash of light, its fiery mane flaring up as it let out a determined cry. Rachel's Eevee perked up, watching its evolved form with admiration. The battle began immediately. Flareon darted forward with Trail Blaze, its movements getting faster as it struck Rocco. Rocco retaliated with Rock Throw, but the nimble fire type dodged effortlessly. Flareon countered with Iron Tail, its glowing tail smashing into Rocco's body, sending him skidding backward. Marc gritted his teeth. He needed to slow Flareon down. Roll out! Rocco curled into a ball and spun forward at a high speed. Flareon attempted to dodge, but Rocco adjusted mid-roll, slamming into it hard. Flareon stumbled, but recovered quickly, unleashing a flamethrower. The intense flames blasted Rocco, but his iron defense absorbed most of the damage. Marc hesitated. He wanted to use Earthquake. It would be his strongest move against Flareon, but the battlefield hovered over lava. What if the attack broke the platform? What if Rocco or Flareon fell? He hesitated for 1 second too long. Flareon lunged with Facade, striking Rocco hard. Rocco, Earthquake! Rocco slammed his fists into the battlefield, sending out a violent shockwave. The platform shook, cracked spiderwebbing across the stone. Flareon yelped as the tremors knocked it off balance. Rocco didn't waste the opening. Roll out! Still curled up, Rocco launched forward, smashing into Flareon with full force. The fire type stumbled backward, dazed, then collapsed. The referee raised his hand.
Flareon is unable to battle. Graveler wins.
Marc let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Skorcha smirked, recalling Flareon. Marc exchanged a fist bump with Rocco. The first battle was his, but Skorcha wasn't done yet. Marc returned Rocco to his Pokeball. Skorcha smirked as she tossed her next Pokeball. A radiant Ninetales emerged onto the battlefield, its fur glowing under the volcanic light. From the stands, Rachel's Vulpix perked up for the first time, its usual grumpy demeanor fading as it stared in awe at its evolved form. Marc grabbed his next Pokeball. His Pidgeotto burst out, wings spread wide as it soared above the battlefield, circling over the hovering platform. Nimbus darted forward with Quick Attack, closing the distance in a blur, but Ninetales leaped aside gracefully, dodging the strike with ease. Ninetales' eyes glowed as it used extra sensory, sending a pulse of psychic energy toward Nimbus. The attack struck, but the Pidgeotto recovered midair, shaking off the mental pressure. Nimbus countered with Steel Wing, his glowing wings slicing through the air. He struck Ninetales across its side, but the fire type retaliated instantly, trapping Nimbus in a swirling fire spin. Flames twisted around Nimbus, limiting its movement. He flapped hard, trying to push through the firestorm, but Ninetales took advantage of the opening, hitting him with Confuse Ray. Nimbus wobbled midair, his movements growing erratic. He gritted his teeth. Nimbus, focus! Use Hurricane! Nimbus struggled, but despite the confusion, he managed to summon a powerful gust. Hurricane howled across the battlefield, pushing the flames and slamming into Ninetales. The fire type skidded backward, but held its ground, its tails whipping through the air. Before Marc could issue another command, Ninetales struck with a devastating extrasensory, hitting Nimbus head-on. The already confused Pidgeotto couldn't dodge in time. Nimbus spiraled through the air, trying to recover, but its wings faltered. He crashed onto the battlefield, unable to continue.
Pidgeotto is unable to battle. Ninetales wins.
Marc sighed, recalling Nimbus. 1 win each. Rachel glanced at her Vulpix, who was still staring at Ninetales with newfound admiration. Maybe this was exactly what her Pokemon needed, to see what it could become. Skorcha smirked.
What's up, Marc? You can't handle the heat?
Marc nodded, gripping his next Pokeball. He wasn't done yet. Rocco, let's go! The Graveler reappeared, slamming its fists together, ready for round 2. Ninetales flicked its tail, standing tall despite its earlier battle with Nimbus. Ninetales wasted no time, launching Fire Spin to trap Rocco in swirling flames. Marc called out, Rock Throw! Rocco tore chunks of stone from the battlefield and hurled them through the fire. Ninetales countered with extra sensory, sending a psychic blast at Rocco, but he planted his feet firmly, taking the hit and standing his ground. Rocco curled up and spun forward. The fire type tried to dodge, but Rocco adjusted mid-roll, shaking off the impact before quickly retaliating with another fire spin, surrounding Rocco again. Marc hesitated for a moment. He didn't like using Earthquake on this battlefield, but he had to take that risk. Rocco slammed into the battlefield, sending out a massive tremor. The entire platform rumbled, and Ninetales was thrown off its feet, unable to dodge. But before it could collapse, Ninetales' eyes glowed ominously. It fired off a Confuse Ray just as it fell. Rocco flinched as the ghostly light hit him. His stance wavered, his eyes unfocused.
Ninetales is unable to battle. Graveler wins.
Marc let out a relieved breath. He won the round, but now Rocco was confused going into the next battle. Marc braced himself. The battle was far from over. Skorcha tossed her next Pokeball. A dark-colored Marowak with a flaming bone materialized onto the battlefield, twirling its weapon. Its bluish-green flames burned intensely as it locked eyes with Rocco. Marc blinked in surprise. An Alolan Marowak?
Caught it in Alola while visiting my mom's side of the family. This one's special.
Marc hesitated, glancing at Rocco, who was still swaying from the effects of Confuse Ray. Anthony frowned. He should switch. Rocco's not in a good state. But for some reason, Marc kept Rocco in. Marowak dashed forward immediately. The bone ignited as it struck with a powerful Shadow Bone. Rocco stumbled back, but shook off the hit. Through the confusion, Marc called out, Iron Defense! Rocco hardened his body, preparing to take the next attack better. Marowak spun its bone and launched a stream of fire, engulfing Rocco. The flames didn't do as much damage thanks to Rocco's typing, but the heat was still intense. Come on, Rocco! Rock Throw! Rocco tried to attack, but its confused state made it stagger. Instead of throwing rocks at Marowak, it hurled them in a random direction, missing completely. Skorcha called for Iron Head. Marowak charged, its skull glowing silver, and smashed into Rocco's body with brutal force. Rocco wobbled, still battling confusion, but Marc refused to give in. Earthquake! Rocco slammed the ground, creating another violent tremor, but Marowak leaped into the air, avoiding the worst of the impact. It landed gracefully and rushed forward again. Marowak used Shadow Bone that struck Rocco head-on, sending the Graveler tumbling off his feet. Rocco tried to push himself up, but his eyes swirled with confusion before he collapsed. The referee raised his hand.
Graveler is unable to battle. Marowak wins.
Marc sighed, recalling Rocco. He tossed his next Pokeball, sending Ray onto the battlefield. Sparks crackled from her cheeks, her stance low and ready. She was brimming with confidence, eyes locked onto Marowak, who twirled its flaming bone in response. Ray wasted no time, vanishing in a blur as agility kicked in, the electricity crackling across the battlefield as it made direct contact. Marowak endured the hit, gripping its bone tightly. Without any command from Skorcha, it suddenly raised its bone high, letting out a deep, unsettling cry. A strange energy rippled across the battlefield, faint but lingering. Marc barely noticed. Ray continued her relentless assault, her speed unmatched. She evaded Marowak's counterattacks effortlessly, followed by a devastating thunder. The bolt struck true, sending Marowak tumbling backward, its body twitching from the sheer force of the hit. It didn't get up. The referee announced Marowak's defeat. Marc stood firm, his focus locked on the battle, unaware of what had just transpired. Ray, victorious, flicked her tail, but then suddenly stumbled. The shift in the air sent a cold sensation through the battlefield. Ray's body shuddered, her sparks flickering erratically. The energy from before pulsed through her like a fading echo. Then it hit Marc. Perish Song had been used, and he hadn't even noticed. Ray let out a weak cry before collapsing. The referee wasted no time calling the result. Marc stood frozen, barely processing what had happened. He had won the battle, but lost Ray in the process? Now, it was one Pokemon each. Skorcha smirked as she reached for her final Pokeball. Everyone in the gym already knew what was coming. This was the battle that had been building from the start, the clash of the fire types. Marc and Skorcha both reached for their final Pokeballs at the same time. Marc sent out Charlie, who landed on the battlefield with fierce determination. The flame on her tail burned brightly, but there was no denying the size difference between her and Skorcha's final Pokemon. Skorcha sent out Magmar, the offspring of Blaine Sr.'s Pokemon. It towered over Charlie, flames raging from its body, eyes sharp with experience. Magmar immediately took control. It launched scorching sands, sending a surge of burning hot earth crashing onto Charlie. The impact knocked her off balance, and she barely had time to recover before Magmar charged forward, landing a devastating poison jab. Charlie stumbled backward, a deep purple hue spreading across her body. She had been poisoned. Marc clenched his fists, watching in horror as Charlie wobbled, struggling to stand. The poison would wear her down fast, and Magmar wasn't letting up. Magmar continued to dominate, launching a relentless barrage of flamethrowers and scorching sands. Each hit pushed Charlie closer to her limit, but she refused to stay down. Marc's heart pounded. He didn't know what to do. Every time Charlie got back up, Magmar knocked her right back down again. The battle felt one-sided, a slow, painful defeat. Then, Magmar began to charge up its strongest attack. Fire Blast. The massive symbol of flames formed in front of Magmar, burning hotter than anything Charlie had faced before. Marc screamed, I forfeit! His voice echoed through the gym. But it was too late. The Fire Blast was already unleashed. Marc's eyes widened in horror as the flames rushed toward Charlie. She tried to brace herself, but the impact was devastating. The sheer force sent her flying backward, her small body hitting the ground hard. The flame on her tail flickered weakly, her body unmoving. Silence filled the battlefield. Marc stood frozen. Charlie had lost, which meant Blaine had lost too. The referee confirmed the result, but Marc barely heard it. His legs felt weak as he ran toward Charlie, falling to his knees beside her. Her body was covered in burns, the poison still lingering. Tears welled in his eyes as he cradled his unconscious partner, the reality of his defeat crashing down on him. Marc let out broken sobs as he held Charlie close.